19th century Pax Britannica.
Well, let me tell you, Pez, what a week of cricket we've just had. We'll be reviewing the fourth test in Ahmedabad, plus also the Modi Albanese takeover of day one. We're also going to review the entire Border Gavaskar series of which India fairly and squarely won 2-1. What an unbelievable game we saw there in Christchurch, New Zealand and Sri Lanka. WPL, South Africa, West Indies. Maharajas ruptures his Achilles, celebrating a wicket. Shaun Marsh has retired. New South Wales still haven't won a game. That's all before we get into hashtag AskTGC. Pez, it's been an amazing week. It's been an amazing week of cricket. But none of this would be possible without our dear patrons. Patreon.com/great cricketer for all of the support in the world that means that we can keep doing this for as long as people still care about it. Do you want to say anything about Patreon and how much we love Patreon?
I do. And I'd like it to be a bit longer than normal. What I'm about to say is the sort of thing you would normally leave to the end of the podcast, but I think it bears saying up the top as we get into this show. This show brings to a conclusion what I didn't realise was the longest stretch of podcasting TGC has ever done. So we're going to take a breather after this cast for a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, and bring it back ahead of the Ashes. Now, I just want to note here goes up the top what we've done and couldn't have done without patrons, truthfully. But everyone's been a part of this. So we've done 46 straight weeks of podcasting, you and I. And we started in May 2022. We've had 50 episodes that's covered the English summer, the T20 World Cup, the Women's World Cup, the Australian summer, the Border Gavaskar Trophy on tour, Zimbabwe beating Australia. We've interviewed 20 players from 7 different countries, 10 journalists from across the world, and Todd Greenberg, who fits into neither of those categories. People might also remember special standalone interviews with Wes Agar in Darwin, Herschel Gibbs, Elise Perry, Harsha Bogle, Adam Zampa, Faf du Plessis, Wasim Akram, and Shane Watson. We brought you side mouths from the MCG and Delhi, naturally, where fans spoke about giving Kohli a rim job, and Shadab Khan bowling darts, quick 99k leggies. That's what you need. That's what you need. We've done a national live show tour in Australia, playing in Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney, alongside Ashton Turner, secret guest Marcus Stoinis, Cal Ferguson, Justin Langer, Ricky Ponting, and Shane Watson. We've done a live show tour across India, playing in Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi, Gurgaon, and Mumbai. And most importantly, in the last 46 weeks, we've been able to bring you important cultural phenomena like Who the Fuck Just Hit My Car, The Last Suckle, and Simple Chalk, Stay in Your Crease, Mate. Really proud reading that out with an aversion immediately to being earnest about it. And I won't go into the economics of how this isn't possible without Patreon. Suffice to say, it isn't. It isn't possible to do those things. So if you are an enjoyer of the show, it is largely driven by the people who support us. And Patreon is, frankly, the thing that allows us to do the dumb shit that I suspect people particularly like in the absence of much other dumb shit out there in the cricket world. So just one call out before we take a bit of a breather from the jewel in the crown that is our main podcast. And if you would like to sponsor it, you still can get in touch because we're talking to a couple of people, nothing's sorted. If you want to keep listening to TGC, we're committed to our patrons every single week. So we're going to be casting all the way through patreon.com/great cricketer. Thanks to everyone, though, for the last 45 weeks or so. It's been a hell of a journey before we take a little breather from the cast, and we're going to be doing some other interesting shit that might land later in the summer. So yeah, that's the Patreon call out this week. He goes, and yeah, what a fucking crazy 45 or so weeks it's been, resulting in a couple of hundreds on a flat deck in India.
So you obviously go there and you can sign up for $5 or $10. That's US dollars a month. So check what your country's doing with submarines in terms of the economy. What that money means to you. Anyway, thank you to always to the people that have supported this here program. Okay, so the fourth test in Ahmedabad started the other day, and it started in one of the weirdest ways possible, which was basically a political rally. And it was it was a couple of world leaders going around on a Batmobile because there was cricket bats coming out of it. Pretty fucking clever stuff, if you ask me. Waving to the fans, and let me tell you, the fans, they just packed into that stadium for the first hour on day one. Didn't catch many other people for the other sort of 4.9 days, but that first day, people love a first session, don't they? I mean, they love I love the action before the toss. They love the toss. And they love that first hour of Test cricket because anything's possible. After that, it became apparent that nothing was really possible anymore. But that was some of the weirdest scenes I've ever seen in a sports stadia. And I've seen The Rock introduce a game before. But that image of Albanese and Modi at the toss, and then Albanese fucking gripping Steve Smith, arm in arm, linking arms, brothers in arms, singing Advance Australia Fair in India. What wonderful, joyous scenes. And really, in many ways, just top of my head, it's sort of about, friendship through cricket. Which is also a foreign concept because I'd never made any friends in cricket, and that was my decision.
That should have been the first sign that something was awry. There are no friends in cricket.
You've got cricket mates and you've got real mates.
Yeah.
Those are your two options.
I actually remember playing a game against a guy that played a fair few games for New South Wales. Didn't quite cut it, I'd say. But he dyed his hair blonde, and we all knew that it was to conceal orange hair, which shouldn't be discriminated against. But his hair was orange and it was dyed blonde. And players in our team thought it hilarious to remind him about that, to which he responded after maybe the sixth that he'd hit in about 10 balls that he's not here to make friends, mate. So I should have known then that something was awry when they said friendship through cricket. A little known fact about The Rock, actually, as you say that, is that he's actually named after a Kookaburra 156 gram ball. That's where his nickname came from. Finally, I think he goes...
He used to be called the Red King when he was growing up.
That's right. He was very nervous when the Sheffield Shield started introducing Duke's balls because that nickname was taken by John Hastings. And you should have seen the legal stoush between the Rocks people and Dukes. It was that was a hell of a set of letters. Now,
Dwayne Johnson and John Hastings, two of the greats.
Pip, there's been some ugly conjecture about the way our friends, because we have friendship through cricket, like the way our friends in India enjoy their cricket. Other journalists have put it to their populace, like to their constituents, that Indians don't enjoy cricket, they enjoy Indian cricket. I think that's harsh, especially judging by our view count, which survives on Indians only. But so I want to go the other way. I actually think that it's really clear from the Ahmedabad game that they're actually a hugely knowledgeable crowd, the Indian crowd. They literally came for where the most action was, which was before the game, and they knew what the fuck was coming up. They got the fuck out of there, And I should note, though, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, I'd lean more towards an Albanese, your Albaneses than your Morrisons, for example, yes, to put it mildly. But what Albanese did with Smith was some Morrison shit, and if Morrison did that, would be criticising the shit out of it. I thought it was cringe as fuck. Got a lot of good shit to say about Albanese otherwise, just for the sake of balance, that was no good. Like, I understand, look, who among us, if we weren't PM and in that scenario, wouldn't just want to clutch a Steve Smith during an anthem? Like, you know what I mean?
Someone like a Steve Smith.
Someone like a Steve Smith and someone like a Prime Minister. In a place like a Modi Stadium. But who among us wouldn't want to just grab that arm? It was a bit cringe for me, that sort of gear. But I suppose he was wrapped up in the in the vibe of the thing, which was very much about clutching politics and sport together. Mm-hmm. Not as though you should actually bring politics into sport. So,
that's true.
A very uneasy bedfellows.
But it could have been. it could have been much, much worse when you think about it. You know, just different leaders at different times. I mean, that literally could have been the CEO of Alinta hugging Cubbins, you know, during the songs. So, you know, during the songs is what they call them. What's the national song? You know, it could have been much worse. It could have been much worse. Anyway, Australia won the toss again, which was 3 out of 4 for the series, and makes it about 10 out of 11 or some shit. And that's really fascinating stuff. Anyway, Australia won the toss, and what did they score, Pez? They scored heaps. They scored 480, didn't they? In about 480. Something like a 480, 480 odd, and it was runs everywhere. Well, actually, it actually wasn't runs everywhere. It was basically 2 guys batted really well. They batted for just about 2 days. I think they declared with about, I want to say, half an hour to go at the end of day 2. So it was pretty slow going. It was sort of 2.5 and over, maybe a little bit more than that throughout the innings. But it was a daddy for Khawaja, just reward for a remarkable series, and just another. I feel like, you know, like when records are broken, and then like in the press conferences afterwards at the end of each day's play, you know, a journalist might, you know, mention to a player just like, oh, are you aware that you've scored the most runs on a Tuesday afternoon in the history of Test cricket since the beginning of 1993? Just that kind of stuff. And they're like, you know what, that's something I'll reflect on later in my career. You know, I'll sit down later in my career and I'll think about, you know, today's Tuesday and I scored heaps of runs on Tuesday. But like, I think something like you know, scoring 100 of India is very present in the player's mind of like, that's a real achievement, and they'd be very aware of that in that moment. And I say that in the context of like how hard it is to play cricket in India for the Australian team and also many other countries. I mean, they haven't barely fucking lost a game in 10 years. But when you break down, like, obviously batting in England for Australians is hard as well because of the moving ball, and we don't play swing very well. But there's still every Ashes series there's heaps of hundreds. Heaps of guys have scored hundreds against England. But like, there's actually very few guys that have scored hundreds in Test cricket in India. Like, there's actually especially in the last 10 years, I think there's 4 or 5 now. It'd be Maxwell, Steve Smith, and someone else has got one in the last 10 years. Oh, Michael Clark. And Smith's got like 4 of them. And now it's Usman and Green, obviously. But I wouldn't say it's typical Indian wickets. But I just want to highlight that I think Usman, having gone so close in other games, and he's scored 50s, and he's done it in much tougher conditions, to get 180, or is that what he got, 180 in the first innings here, must have been so satisfying. Like, just reward for an amazing comeback into Test cricket since Travis Head got COVID. It's like 600 since then. I'm getting all these stats wrong, but you know, it's a general theme. It's just reward for a tremendous player that's now got 14 Test hundreds. Amazing. Good for him. Everyone's happy for him, right?
Oh yeah, and by the same token, like, Kohli's 100 was just on the flatty, so it doesn't count. But you know, Usman's just, you know, a really big feather in the cap. Yeah, no, you know what I find interesting about that is I think you're exactly right, and I think, you know, 100 in India is worth double. You know, it's like doing 4-unit maths in year 12 and getting like 30, and it's like, no, that's worth 100. And I thought a lot of their 30s this time around was like that, so I don't know that's why I did general maths. But like, yeah, it was, which is a waste of time, to be honest. But sorry, I'm now thinking about the numbers of our business as well and how desperately need an accountant. But like, anyway, yeah, it was. Look, this test was a bit fill your boots, to be honest. Like, but it's funny how you call it 100 in India, because like because we've got goldfish TikTok memory brains. In time, all the hundreds in India will just be the same. They'll all be on minefields, and it was just 100 in India, which are really hard to get. This deck was 22 wickets and like 8,000 runs being scored. So right now we can be like, well, you know, wouldn't say it was an amazing test of skill, but in time it will just be 100 in India, which is great. I suppose I'm taking away from it a little bit, but I'm speaking more about how flat it was, you know. But yeah, and you know, it's a shame that the Binley didn't get those extra 10 runs as well, so he could have his 100 in India, because all of these will just be conversations that come up in 4 years' time, where it will be pouring over the paucity of runs of guys like Labuschagne, who's the 4th leading run scorer, I think, in this series, Australia's 2nd leading run scorer after Khawaja, and it will still just be like, only 150 there though, you know. only 150, you know, like, or like, you know, Australia won in 2004, maybe more relevant. Little remembered that like one or two of those tracks were extremely in Australia's favour due to some political stuff that was going on at the time. But when it's all said and done, it's like, nah, the boys know how to do it in India, you know? They know how to get it done. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean I've said this before, but you watch highlights of like the game where they actually win the series, and they've got like 6 slips and a gully to start the game. It's like, okay, so you could actually allow to bowl pace on that wicket, could you? So it seems like Australia might have had some a little bit of equality there, I suppose. Anyway, but Cameron Green also scores his first Test match 100. I mean, that made us feel really good. There's obviously, it's in cricket, including this. In this game itself, it's like the next game is actually more important. Now, that actually did become apparent as soon as Sri Lanka couldn't win their first game in Christchurch. So then Australia and India are now playing in the World Test Championship final in a couple of months' time. And it's like, okay, that game actually is more important. But like with Cameron Green, you know, him doing stuff now like bodes well for the future. Like somehow, even though he's just done something well now, and that's good. Like he probably, in many ways, when he came to the crease and that partnership put on Quaja, actually saves the game for Australia, because I think they were, I'm going to get this wrong again, they were 4 for not many, 4 for not that many, 4 for 150, 170 or something like that, and then they put on about 200. And so that sort of saves the game. So in the time that he came in was actually rather important. But that aside, in this drawn game on a flat one, this result bodes well for the future of Australian cricket, because he's done something now, and that means he'll do something good for us in the future. And I hope that means good things when he plays for Mumbai next month.
Yeah, I think that the 100 was as it was with Kohli in a different way. I think Shastri described that as a gorilla on his back. I could see that being a confected scenario with Cam Green as well. Oh, how can he be that good if he doesn't sort of autistically hit 3 figures at some point? I
thought you meant a gorilla on his back. I can actually kind of see that. Those like a silverback and Cam Green wrestling at it.
I mean, his back is so big, it may as well be, carrying one. Like, I'd have a massive look at that. We got something premiering. We got something premiering on that front soon too. But we'll just have to wait for that. But yeah, it was. I was personally. And I'm sure this will mean a lot to Cam Green, but I was personally relieved that he got that 100 as well, so that I, in the future, didn't have to look through various news outlets questioning when he's going to get one and feeling little tinges of anxiety before getting on with my life and the other challenges and tribulations that I have. That was a really important thing. It was just great to watch him at the crease for a long time. I just thought it was great to see him crunch drives and pull off the front and back dog. It was really good. It was good gear.
The future of Australia.
Big man in a baggy green lid.
It's a big stride.
The future of Australia.
He's a prototype, lab-designed wet dream.
The future of Australia.
It is a big stride. He's got big reach.
He is a very powerful, strong athlete.
The future of Australia.
And it's the size of it too. Cam Green, baggy green.
And we know how big it is.
The future of Australia. The future of Australia.
Did it make you feel things in your heart or your loins?
The future of Australia. The future of Australia.
This boy's gonna be the fucking best player ever.
Also, he's 2 meters tall. Also, he's 2 meters tall. Also, he's 2 meters tall.
Are you watching a big man that's 2 meters tall down the deck to his first ever Test 100?
It's perfection. Tall.
The future of Australia has been extremely pleasing.
Because he's got plenty in terms of gear. He's got plenty of gear.
Extremely pleasing.
He can go big.
And it's the size of it too.
It's perfection.
A big man that's 2 meters tall.
Has been extremely pleasing.
He's got plenty of gear.
Extremely pleasing.
It's perfection. Also, he's 2 meters tall.
I don't see how he doesn't captain the national side for 10 years with size 14 feet. Are you kidding me? Get out of here. It's sort of hard to talk about this game without talking about the entire series, mainly because this game was, broadly speaking, absolute dross. Although it sort of ended up in dross in the last 2 days, given that no result was really feasible for either side. But so we'll just talk about one more thing, I think. Kohli scored his 28th Test 100. Apparently he was battling some fever. Maybe a bit of Saturday night fever. I'm not really sure what that fever was exactly. But it's his 28th Test 100. I think it was chanceless. I think he's looked good throughout the entire series. But it was a somewhat muted celebration for a guy who hasn't scored a Test 100 in 4 years. I think that just goes to show how flat the deck was. He thought, well, this one barely counts. This one barely...
Yeah. When I saw him celebrate,
trying to upset people now.
Yeah. I was confused because when I saw him celebrate, you're totally right. It was a muted celebration. I thought it's either a flat deck or he used to play for Australia, and he just doesn't want to upset the away fans. You know what I mean?
He ran away to the away fans.
He ran away just with his hands up. You know. Indian fans go, just celebrate. It's fine. You've scored 100. You know, even the Australian fans are like, no, just I had a good time in Australia. Yeah,
Too much respect. True respect. Great memories. Right. You'll never walk alone.
He must have played for Australia. Maybe came through the academy or something like that, or lots of friends there. You know what I mean? I didn't realise that.
He did spend a lot of time in Perth, didn't he? He spent a lot of time in Perth growing up. He's got some friends over there still. Shout out to Shrey.
Shout out to Shrey, Stein. Yeah, it's good.
Just one more thing as well. In this game, Nathan Lyon went past the most wickets taken by an overseas bowler in India. Go past Underwood. There was just there was a great list there actually. It was Underwood. I think it was Benno was second. Benno had 50 wickets in 8 games, 52 wickets in 8 games. Yeah. Then it was Courtney Walsh who had similar numbers of 7 games, averaging 18 in India. Fucking hell. He must have been really hard to rag at Courtney Walsh. They must have, because they're playing the same wickets all the time. These pitchers aren't. They're just like this all the time. So,
mate, it just supports my unpopular theory that Walsh wasn't that good, and he must have been so slow. He was playing spin, you know. Unpopular opinions.
But it is remarkable. How well he bowled. Even in this game, you know, he bowled dry for periods of time. I don't say he got a lot of support from the deck in this game, but it's a great achievement for him. It's 54, 55 wickets. I also saw this morning that he has got the most wickets in India-Australia series all overall. He's just got a couple more than Ashwin, who, to be fair to Ashwin, I think has a slightly better average and has played a couple less games. But this was as good as I've ever seen him bowl in this series. I suppose we're tipping into review of series stuff. But again, I just think in a game where no one really had anything much, the fact that Lyon did go past that record for most wickets in India, given that he is unlikely to tour India again, I think he'd be in his late 30s by the time Australia next go there. It's good. It's good for him. Good for the GOAT.
Yeah, you know it's a good stat when you're actually seeing the names of people that aren't modern day players that are literally just on a drip feed of content for TV channels. You know, I feel like every so many quantitative style stats, or stats that are based in quantity, are just hogged by modern day players that just play all the time. I think there's a little bit of that with Nathan Lyon because, you know, the gradual erosion of Test cricket playing nations means that he does play against India a lot. But when you see other names Underwood, and then you see Richie Benno pop up in a stat, then you're like, okay, this is actually whatever Nathan Lyon has done, it must have been really good because other modern greats haven't been able to overtake whatever's in there. So, and I agree with you. This does tip into the review, which we'll do in a second, but it's the best I've seen him bowl, I think, particularly coming back from Nagpur. I was really pleased with him. I mean, he's been around for such a long time, but he still has gone up in my estimations there. I thought he led the line really well and bowled in many different ways. You know, he was able to knock them over late on in a game. He was able to hold it tight. He was able to attack, defend. It was. I was really pleased for him.
Okay, Pez, let us review the entire Border Gavaskar series for season 2023. That's how I talk about years. I talk about them in seasons. India win the series 2-1. Obviously, the draw there in the 4th test in Ahmedabad. But they won fair and square in Delhi. They won fair and square in, where was the first game? Nagpur. and then obviously Australia got a result in indoor. But it's very difficult to really escape any part of the conversation with this entire series, and unfortunately this is going to upset a lot of people, but that's just the way the internet works. Is that over the course of the series, mate, I find it hard to escape the discussion of any point about really 4 pretty ordinary pitches that we got to see. I mean, obviously the third pitch was somewhere near a disgrace. The fourth pitch was, I suppose, in the end, given that you've seen 22 wickets fall over the course of 5 days, it's not a great advert for the game, because people like advertising to last 5 days, generally speaking, anyway. And there's obviously the counterpoints of like, yeah, well, what about one time your pitch did this, or what about that South Africa game, or what about when the ball swings too much, or the ball bounces too much, or I understand all these things, but over the course of the series, I personally feel just a little hint of being like underwhelmed by the quality of the cricket that we've seen, because so much of the conversation is around the pitch just nullifies so many of the skills of these guys. And so I don't see the best of Rohit Sharma. I don't see the best of Virat Kohli, Steve Smith. I don't see the best of Umesh Yadav or Shami or Mitchell Stark or Cummins when he played. There's so many guys that are nullified, and essentially and fair reward. India win the series fair and square. There's no complaints about that. There's a reason why there's talk of pitches every time a touring team goes over to India and they prepare these absolute shit tips. I mean, it's either the teams that constantly go over there and are concerned about it are wrong, or there's absolutely zero conversation to be had about the decks at all. Now, that is just purely ridiculous. I mean, it's plain and obvious to see that these pitches are silly. They're silly, and they nullify the skills of so many guys. So whilst it has been an interesting series and there's been highs and lows for both sides, there's also been a political rally on day one of the fourth test. That was something interesting. Apart from, or within the first 2 minutes of this, it's hard to escape reflecting on the series with being like, I just feel a little shortchanged because I don't get to see all the guys perform well, you know? Yeah.
Well, firstly, cry more.
Good.
I think that's the first response.
Cry me a more, right?
Why Crimea River? Not to be confused with the Crimea River or the Justin Timberlake song.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm not sure. I just think I'm not sure anymore, mate, because I've got someone pointing a gun at me right here, and I don't. Yeah, it's funny, you know. Look, I agree with you, firstly, and I think that's clear. Like, I agree with that analysis. I note that Gideon Haigh, who I just have, I think he's the best cricket writer in the world, and he's a national treasure. He's one of the best writers in Australia, and I think he has an unimpeachable record of fairness in the way he covers cricket that you just cannot. You could never accuse Gideon Haigh of being biased towards Australia in any of his writing, because it speaks to his his balance and distance as a journalist and a writer, but he's been withering in his criticism today in the Australian, which is behind a paywall, to be fair, of these pitches. He called them fixed, which is a loaded term, but I think he means that they have been fixed by the BCCI to ensure the maximal advantage was obtained by the home team. The reason why I'm unsure about talking about it is I'm not sure I would start with pitches when it comes to the entire series, although it is such a massive part of it. I think in time, with distance, we'll probably go, well, that's what you get here. That's what you get in India. That's the sporting challenge of playing in India in the current context. Mm-hmm. I do think it was extreme. It was laid on pretty thick to the extreme this time around. I would start by saying, against that backdrop, the series belonged to Ashwin and Jadeja, who got it done in the first two tests. They got it done for India. They broke the back of the Australians before the Australians could rally, which they did. Ahead of this tour, I think both you and I, and not to be confused with you am I, were concerned about a 4-0 drubbing with all of these things factored in. And not just a 4-0 drubbing, but 4-0 fuck off drubbing.
Yeah.
And so it was a successful failure for Australia to finish 2-1 against that backdrop. And but the damage was done by Ashwin and Jadeja, whose skill in those first 2 tests and just the impossibility of playing those guys with Australia's poor, meagre preparation, I think, tells the ultimate story. I just think with a bit of distance in time, it'll just be Australia didn't prepare very well, and Ashwin and Jadeja licked their chops and mopped them up, which is a hell of a mixed metaphor, which is another factor of this series as well, judging by the commentary. They licked their chops and mopped them up. And I reflect on this series with a sense of regret that due to the economics and macro factors in cricket, that the Australian men's team didn't approach the series with the kind of meticulousness that any win would require. You know, to win in those circumstances, knowing full well that those kind of wickets would be produced. We knew that ahead of time. They didn't give themselves a chance, I think. And I think it actually sells the skill of the Australian men's team short, because I think what they did with what they had was excellent. But at the end of the day, it's sport. And in time, it'll just be another 2-1 loss to Australia, the 4th in a row against India. And Cry Me Amore will make sense in that time. The answer to losing 2-1 against India is not let's complain about the wickets that we get. I think it's a part of it, but any future team is going to have to, if they want to win, accept that that's what you're going to get. It's final boss shit in sport, and you have to have an answer to that. I think the way cricket's going is going to make that answer really difficult. Like, unless Australia starts putting blokes in the Ranji Trophy playing for Tamil Nadu, I don't know what kind of deck they have there, but that'll be really interesting to see if they start producing raggers if Pekovski's playing for Tamil Nadu, which I've advertised and advocated for a long time. That's the opening thing I would say. I'd say it's Ashwin and Jadeja and it's preparation. They're the 2 major things to come out of this series for me.
I think that we've maintained, ever since the first test match, like, whilst the wickets have been what they have been, we've maintained that, like, it's all well and good, but, like, you're just going to have to overcome that at some point. Someone at some time is going to have to overcome that. Now, I think you rightly point out that the damage was done in the first 2 test matches by Ashwin and Jadeja. But for me, the difference in the 2 sides, and part of the reason, well, actually, the main reason why I think India would deserve to win, because India had the better players throughout the series. Now, like that, I don't think that could be more true of certainly Axar Patel, who I think we predicted and were certainly terrified of for months leading into this. Axar Patel was just going to absolutely fucking dominate this. I mean, I think his record in India was about 6 with the ball heading into this series. Turns out he's actually Bradman with the bat. He's actually done a revert. He's actually done Steve Smith. He's done a Steve Smith. He's actually going to be a batter in the future. I mean, he averages nearly 100 for the series. He gets out for 79, 79 or 80 in the 4th test match there, so he averages whatever he averages. But it was he is a difference batting at 8. Australia had a long tail, basically with Carey in there at 7, and then into the bowlers from 8 to 11. But our bowlers are nowhere near the skill level of the with the bat as what the Indian players are, and like having Ashwin, I think Ashwin batted than 9 at one game. I mean, the guy's got 4 or 5 test hundreds, isn't he? So. But Axar Patel just scoring runs at critical moments. And, Australia, like, that's one thing I like about when Australia go to India. At least we give them a game. We give them a game there. And, like, got to say, the same thing in reverse. Like, India always give us a game when it's in Australia, to the point where they've actually won the last 2 series here. And now 4 in a row. So it's actually quite a good game. It's actually a bit too good of a game, if I'm honest.
They've given us losses.
That's right. We're taking L's left, right, centre. Especially on this channel in the comments. But yeah, man, like Axar Patel has just had an incredible series. And sorry, to my point, Australia had their chances, had their moments, obviously in Delhi. with scoring 280, 270 or something. And I've obviously got all these scores right in front of me. So, and Australia having them 5 for 150, 5 for 130 or something like that. Then Axar Patel comes in and scores another 70, 7 for 130. And Axar Patel comes in and plays maybe the innings of the series. I know Rohit Sharma scores 120 early on, and obviously Khawaja and Green and Kohli score hundreds. Obviously Kohli with his 28th Test 100, that 186 in Ahmedabad. But Axar Patel basically wins the series and books India's place in the World Test Championship final with that score in Delhi. And what a fucking player he is! I mean, he's almost like just buying chop out overs in Test matches, even though his record's incredible.
Yeah,
barely gives you anything. Barely gives you anything to score off with the ball, and then just scores these incredible runs and averages a fucking 100 for the series.
Yeah,
Fuck.
Yeah, it's like it's like India has a ridiculous bench strength. You know what I mean? Like, Ashwin Jadeja needs a rest. Bring on Axar Patel, who'll also be the third highest run scorer in the series with the bat. Yeah, man. Like, I've noticed already that some of the reflections on the series in Australia has been that 1 hour of madness costs Aussies the series. I take issue with that. Like, I disagree with that. And I don't think that the idea that like Australia collapsing took place over some narrow time period somehow diminishes it, and it makes whatever happened count for less. I also think that read diminishes India's skill too much. Part of that collapse was brought about from the pressure that Ashwin and Jadeja created. Inferior oppositions make mistakes when the people they're facing are too good. That the collapse was a result of India's skill. I also think that collapse and the decision, and I believe that decision to sweep, though the Aussies claim otherwise, it appears to me to be a collective call. They've run away from that a lot. It just doesn't make sense to me that all of a sudden 7 or 8 of them start brooming when they never did. And the explanation is that we coincidentally went away from our methods to do this one particular thing that continued to fail. It just doesn't make sense to me and bears more exploration, I think. But I'll just sit on YouTube instead. Nevertheless, I just think that the fact that the Aussies chose to broom during that time, thus bringing on the Ian Healy dustbin thing as well. But the fact that they chose to broom during that time, that too was a result of under-preparation. If the Aussies are out of play... so for example, the way they're acclimatised to the pitches now and Indian cricket now, I think would lead them to choose a different path, had they been presented with the same situation. Does that make sense? So, the fact they chose to broom was because they felt a paucity of options otherwise, given the preparation and adaptation that they had at that time. The only way they felt they could score runs was to broom quickly, to get it done, because as they were saying at the time, which you'll note they've stopped saying now, they had, you had one with your name on it. If you have 10 days in India ahead of a series, you are going to think there is one with your name on it. That's the truth. But if you spend a little bit longer and you prepare for it with the respect that it deserves, facing 2 of the masters of the game, you probably stop thinking there's one with your name on it because, as Ravi Shastri's been saying, you start trusting your defence. So I do think the answer to Australia's failures in the first 2 tests were, 1, brought about by India's skill, but 2, it was a failure of their own making by disrespecting what it takes to actually win there. And that's the regret that comes into it. That's a controllable from Australia's end, but is it if you've got big old IPL contracts and a couple of big bash TV rights deals to secure with blokes sitting tons in Coffs Harbour?
Mate, it's very fascinating you say talk about the preparation, because obviously the next test series for Australia is the Ashes. And you just look at what guys are doing in preparation for that series. I mean, it might go to a bigger question of what's more important. It could be a question about the window that these test matches fall into or whatever. I'm not really sure, but I think it's fairly obvious that this test series now is somewhat rivaling the Ashes, if we're definitely in finances in terms, but just in interest, in skill level, in what is soon becoming the pinnacle of the game. I still think the Ashes tilts that just because of the history of it, even though there's now really good and rich history in this series. But I'm just looking like what guys are doing in preparation for the Ashes. Guys are not playing in the IPL in preparation for the England Test summer. There are a number of Australian players who will be in and around the squad. I'm talking about Cameron Bancroft, Marcus Harris, these kind of guys. Guys like them, not them, but guys like them. They're playing for Durham and Gloucestershire. Steve Smith obviously has a run with, I think it's Sussex. Is he got a couple of games with, was it Sussex? And it's another county side. There are guys who have gone over there for years and played English summers there too. But I'm talking specifically for this series coming up. Guys are taking time away from white ball cricket, even though there's a 50-over World Cup later in the year. Guys are playing for the counties before the Ashes, or they're going to be in England trying to score bulk runs to be knocking on the door. So if someone like Dave Warner falls out of favour with the selectors, then they're already over there. I'm thinking about Cam Bancroft and Marcus Harris specifically there to replace Warner. So those guys might not be picked in the squad, for instance, because they're already going to be over there. Because if they're picked in the squads, if they're picked in the test squad, they won't be available to play for the counties. So I think the Australian selectors will pick guys who don't have a county contract and will be taken over there. But then I don't think like the reserve batter will win this. Like if Renshaw is a reserve batter as an example, but Cam Bancroft's just scored 400s for Durham in a week and Warner's out of favour, I think Bancroft is more likely to come in. Anyway, my point being, the guys are going over there and they're preparing themselves for the Ashes, you know, and we don't have that. We're going over to India 10 days beforehand. We're trying to scarify wickets. We're trying to pick guys that look a bit like Ashwin in the nets. It's all very cut and paste job, isn't it? It's shortcut city. It's shortcut city. Anyway,
yeah, and I think that's the disappointment of it, mate. To be honest, like this series will be in the rearview mirror very quickly. You know, the next one will come up. Obviously, it's the Ashes, which is pretty big, but then it'll be a World Cup. Then it'll be where are we at vis-a-vis TV rights. I mean, mate, like, you know, I know from a reliable source that there are moves afoot in terms of the exploration, at least of, and this has been reported anyway, but specifically, you know, there are moves afoot in terms of private equity in cricket, and you know, I think the entire economy of the game is ripe for major disruption soon, and all of those things are not a result of a great sporting challenge and test series between Australia and India. It's because of the business of cricket that's available in the white ball game, you know, and through domestic franchise cricket, and players wondering where their central administration sits within all of that, you know, and whether they're getting value for it. And all of those factors, I think, are going to be the conversation in cricket over the next couple of years. The Australia-India Test Series is like this, it's this sporting challenge that somehow sits as in the periphery. Let's do it every 4 or 5 years. It's the hardest thing you can play in cricket, but it doesn't drive the economy of the game in any way, I think. You know, it's something to appease the purists, it seems. And to that end, it's a, you know, it was great to see Kohli score 100 in this last game. Hopefully he's still around the next time Australia comes out to India, but I think he's been holding Test cricket up in India for a long time, and he should be thanked and applauded for that. I don't know where it's going from here, but I really... and I think that explains Australia's under preparation as well. You know, it's like, well, what does this mean for the business of cricket? It doesn't mean much, I think. And even our own experience of covering this series has really been met with a lot of responses, at least in commercial terms, around like, we don't really do business around Test cricket. You know, business is done elsewhere. And I think that explains Australia's lack of preparation. And I think it's a point of sadness, because this is a really good Australian team. They have come out of sandpaper. They have grown. They have matured. So many of those players are at their peak. They will not be back. This was their chance. And I think the lack of preparation and the way cricket's going really does account for the fact that they did not bring to that series what they needed to in order to win.
I think as well, mate, we've spoken at length about various things pertaining to this, but obviously the Indian batters have had quite a drop-off over the last few years, particularly playing at home. Not sure what the correlation with that is, but there's one guy in particular, I think, who's had probably the greatest series of his life, and by that I mean Shubman Gill, who we haven't even spoken about yet, who obviously scored 100 as well. He scored his second Test 100, his first one against Australia after scoring 130, I think, against Bangladesh. And he has just had one of the series of his life. He's avoided 2 of the tougher wickets early on, and he let KL Rahul take the heat on those. He obviously came in for the indoor Test match, which was just, I don't think anyone could be blamed for anything that happened there. And then scores 100 against Australia on a flat one, and he is just absolutely fucking flying at the moment. He's got hundreds, for the white ball setup, both in T20 and in ODI, and he's now got red ball hundreds as well, bulk hundreds. Bulk, he's got 2. But this is the future. He's a 23-year-old. It's good looking. It's definitely the future. I mean, like it seems very, very hard for someone like a KRL to get back into the side. Certainly opening the batting, it would seem. But I think he's probably had his go. But Shubman Gill is he's played a masterstroke here. He's played a masterstroke. Just come in for the flat one, score 100. Great series.
Totally. And, I do wonder whether part of the, let's use Gideon's term, like the fixing of wickets was an acknowledgement from the BCCI that, like, their aging top 6, Gill aside, were vulnerable, that they needed to build on that strength of spin and batting depth. And that's because, like, in praise of Indian cricket, like, they really have so many young guys who are so ready to go. It seems really difficult to get into that top 6 at the Indian side at the moment for reasons I could only speculate on. But Gill's a great example. Like, you bring him in, he got a good deck this time around, but he didn't miss out. Like, he filled his boots straight away, and you could see the class there. Like, he should be a fixture in that side. And there's a couple of other younger guys coming through. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing those younger guys get a gig in the next couple of years, because it's going to be great and novel to see some different shapes from batters and shit like that. But they have it. They've got that production line humming now, and I think Gill will be front and center of that. I thought it was interesting that, like, Khawaja and Kohli, who are closer to the end and the beginning of their careers, the statesmen, they scored tons, and then also Gill and Green scored hundreds as well, who are really going to drive that rivalry for the next 10 years probably. So I thought that was symmetrical, which helps me in my Rubik's Cube challenges.
I think KS Barrett had an interesting series as well. I didn't rate the gloves, if I'm honest. The gloves weren't awful, but I just think they were probably a little bit below par. Obviously, the side is missing Rishabh for reasons previously spoken about on the show. But I think his batting was okay. I know he's been the reserve keeper for a little while. Ishan Kishan was there as a backup keeper this time round. That would be interesting if we had a look at that. But I think he's gone okay. I think Shreyas Iyer is an interesting one who's had a really good start to his red ball career, and he almost took the game away from Australia in that 3rd Test match in Indore if it wasn't for an excellent Khawaja catch, but which sort of turned the game. Then obviously Pujara got out shortly after that with a great catch from Steve Smith. But you're right, man. There's a few guys been knocking on the door. I know a lot of Indian fans are just like, let's get the next generation through now. It's probably a little bit early for that. I think guys Pujara wasn't that long ago being dropped with Rahane, after going through a bit of a lead run. Kohli, no runs for 4 years, no hundreds for 4 years, and KL Rahul struggling as well. So it's just interesting. But I think Shreyas Iyer's had a decent series. Obviously came in halfway through the series. He missed the first Test match, didn't he? But I think there's something there. The keeper, I know he won't be the keeper forever. The side's definitely missing Rishabh. But I don't know. I just can't. I find it hard to escape. Just like, Axar Patel's a difference, and he's a really good batter.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before, but at our live show in Sydney, Shane Watson took a nonce question from somebody who literally wanted his prediction on the series, and he got it right. So this was about a month out from the Border Gavaskar trophy starting, and he just said, look, I just think they're going to have a little bit more with the bat against our bowlers and a little bit more with the ball against our batters, than we have in reverse. And that's actually how it's panned out, really. It was the difference was a little bit of mastery and exploitation of the decks from Jadeja and Ashwin against our guys who were still feeling their way in, and it was Rohit's 120 against our bowlers. We just couldn't conjure something like that against theirs early on before the series settled down and before we found our feet. And so it is I suppose in praise of some of the older heads there, because those guys are more experienced, particularly Rohit. So yeah, I think it's really fair to say, and you've said it many times up top, not that this will be the response in the comments, but India a good value for a 2-1 win in these circumstances ahead of our guys. It just is a little bit frustrating that I felt like we brought a lot of skill and a lot of willingness, but didn't match it with the preparation that it deserved, because you could see our guys improve as the series went on. I just wish that they'd expedited that improvement to the first or the second test. And I think we may have seen a better chance of winning. Maybe not even doing it. I mean, I still even feel like in this test in Ahmedabad, you could still see that India had some ascendancy in both disciplines on that flat deck. So just goes to show how hard it is to win here and how difficult the path seems to, with the way cricket is going, to create the kind of team you need to beat India.
So we move on to the Oval, where the World Test Championship final will start about 7 days before the first Ashes Test match, so that will be interesting in itself. And let's go with predictions. I think Australia will win the toss and they'll bowl first. And then India will score 270, and then Australia will score 340 in reply. And then India will be all out 170, and Australia will chase 100 in the fourth innings, 6 down, and Australia will win inside 4.5 days. They'll celebrate for a day. They'll probably go out in London somewhere. They might do the London Eye. They might do Westminster Bridge. They could do some wax museum stuff. I'm not really sure. They'll have a good time though. And then for the first Ashes Test match, Australia will win the toss again, and they'll bat.
I think more predictions should be like that. I'm sick of these like predictions that speak in vague generalities. You know, like let's get it down to the nth degree. You know, like I think Cummins will forget his blazer. He'll have to wear Steve Smith's one, but luckily Steve Smith's blazer's got long arms, and so it won't actually seem that available. Hey, I just want to note, speaking of Steve Smith, I haven't heard a journalist pick up on this, but and I think this is relevant to BGT and the Oval, etc. But a couple of days ago, after Steve Smith's dismissal in Ahmedabad for 38, I think off like 1,000 balls.
Yep.
Mark Waugh and Brad Haddin, as they in Australia, they flick back to the Fox commentary in between innings, or maybe at the end of the day, Mark Waugh made a really specific comment that following Steve Smith's dismissal, he said, "I wouldn't be surprised if he retired overnight," which and just gave it up. Which Brad Haddin said, "I'm with you, Junior." Now, and I say this out of full respect for Mark Waugh. Like he's a great figure of fun, but he has an essential authenticity, and he also has an essential sense of judgment as well. We know Steve Smith's spoken about early retirement before. Not sure if it's motivated by wanting something out of Cricket Australia or whether he's such an enigma that we don't really quite understand his relationship to the game. But it really struck me as Mark Waugh traversing an area that he does not normally traverse. That is, Mark Waugh is not prone to idle speculation about things like this, whatever you want to say about him. I think he has a very good sense of where to tread and where not to tread. And for Mark Waugh to say, "I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Smith retires overnight," and for Brad Haddin to say, "I'm with you, Junior," it just pricked my ears a little bit and made me wonder whether, that is not the sort of thing Mark Waugh would say without a sense of what might be going on. So if Cricket Australia is listening, can you please give Steve Smith whatever the fuck he needs? Because the country is not finished with him. But look, no journalist seems to have followed that up. But I was concerned, and I say it out of respect for Mark Waugh's judgment and the places he traverses and doesn't, because that's not the sort of shit Mark Waugh says unless he has half a clue. So I hope to see Steve Smith at the Oval is what I'm saying. God damn it.
Fucking hell. Oh my God. I mean, if he announces his retirement before the Ashes starters, England will have another open-top bus parade. I'm sorry. Be going through fucking Leicester Square, just fucking shirts off. Flintop's got himself on there. He's flogged again. Peterson's got the skunk haircut. He's riding on top there as well.
Yeah, they're going into 10 Downing Street with fucking Rishi in there for pissing behind his desk or something, which has got nothing to do with Steve Smith. It's just the bloke's a coat. So
have you heard Smudge has given it up? Woo! Okay, let's talk about the other Test series which was going on at the same time. New Zealand and Sri Lanka in Christchurch. Now, this game was a fucking unbelievable game. Twice in 2 matches in New Zealand, they've had absolute blinders. So Sri Lanka batted first. 355 thanks to Kusal Mendes' 87. Tim Southey, obviously with the captain's armband these days, took 5 for 64 in the first innings. And then New Zealand made 373, a lead of, 18. So originally they were 5 for 150. They were then 6 for 188. And at this time, I was thinking like, obviously we're watching the Australia-India game, or the India-Australia game rather, and we're thinking like, oh, well, all of a sudden, do India need to win this game? Because it was looking like Sri Lanka well in front. That was before Daryl Mitchell made 102, and Matt Henry made his highest test score of 72. So they got themselves actually 18 in front. Then Sri Lanka made 302, thanks to Angelo Matthews' 102. Now, that meant that New Zealand needed 285 to win, and I think they needed it... when did they start batting? I think they started batting at the very end of day 4. So it was basically 1 day to play, 285 to win. They eventually got it down 8 down. Kane Williamson hit 121 red. Daryl Mitchell hit 81, so he had a fucking great game. Daryl Mitchell now averages 59 in Test cricket, by the way. He's played 17 Tests. I think it's just under 1,300 Test runs already so far. It's an amazing start to his career. Obviously scored all those runs in England as well, in that series. Anyway, so let's just cut straight down to it, to the final over of day 5. So the last over of day 5, New Zealand was 7 for 277. They needed 8 to win from 6 balls, obviously, 3 wickets in hand. So the first ball, Williamson hits a single, so that made it 7 off 5. Then Matt Henry hits a single, so it was 6 off 4. Williamson then hits the ball down the ground. They try for 2, and Matt Henry has run out. They obviously get the single. So it's 5 off 3. Neil Wagner comes in. Now, Wagner is injured. He had scans the night before. He's got a bulging disc in his back and a torn right hamstring. He's already been ruled out of the second test match, but he comes in as basically the runner in this situation. So it's 5 off 3. Then Kane hits a 4. Now it's 1 off 2. Unbelievable scenes here. Dot ball, the next ball. It's a bouncer to Kane Williamson. It's not called a wide. It's definitely a wide. And at that point, India now qualify for the World Test Championship final. Sri Lanka can't win because they need to take 2 wickets off 1 ball remaining. The last ball, 1 off 1 required. It's a bouncer. Kane goes for the hook. He misses. The keeper throws at the stumps. The players run. They take the single. The keeper misses the run out of Wagner, who dives into his crease. Asita Fernando, who's the bowler, he collects the ball mid-wicket. He turns, he throws, and pings the ball at the bowler's end where Kane Williamson is diving into his crease. It goes upstairs to the third umpire. He's in by about 10 centimetres, and New Zealand win another unbelievably thrilling test match in Christchurch. Good for them. I mean, I think they're 5th in the world, so it doesn't really bother us, but all the best, lads.
Oh, we love Test cricket so much. Let's spend half an hour talking about an absolute shit tip Border Gavaskar Trophy Series. New Zealand win 2 of the greatest Test matches of all time. Fucking good for them, skeletons.
Oh, you beat Sri Lanka at home.
Well
Fucking
done,
geez,
boys.
What a result. Circuit tonight, boys.
It's
So
Kane stuff again. Fucking Kane.
Oh,
I
my
love
God,
it.
man.
Daryl Mitchell, mate, and Wags. Wags turned 37 yesterday, I think. Just hairing up to the danger end with a bulging disc and a torn right hammy, just diving his way into the crease.
Oh.
That's the shit. That's good gear. And Kane
bulging
making
pants.
yeah, exactly. But I don't know what else to say other than just agreeing with you wholeheartedly. 5th, good stuff, guys. I mean, you know. What I want to ask is, what decks did New Zealand order in for the last 2 tests? It's clearly working for them as well. Either that or all Test cricket should be played in New Zealand now.
New Zealand in March.
Are we got? Oh, right, yeah. Sorry. When does Australia next go to New Zealand for Test series? It's such a rare thing, but I like the aesthetic a lot. It's a really good aesthetic for me. I need to think about why. Because my last memory is of Australia going in like 2016 and Josh Hazelwood asking who the fuck is the third umpire. And just generally it looking cold and Australia's wearing sweaters, you know.
Yeah, sweaters. Yeah.
But yeah, no, good. It's good shit. I mean, fuck, God, New Zealand punch, right? Like above, they're so good like that. They're so good, and then they make friends with the opposition, and then it gets weird. For me, it's difficult to understand. Yeah, no, well done, the skeleton.
I think that was Kane Williamson's. I think it was his 26th Test 100. Fuck me, I've got so many stats wrong today, but I'm doing my best over here. And then Kohli got his 28th, and Joe Root is on 29 Test 100, and Steve Smith just recently got his 30th Test 100. So that's where we're at in terms of the Big Four race for. I'm not sure what the race is. I guess who finishes with the highest number, I suppose. But we're getting towards the end of that generation. I suppose Joe Root's probably got a few more years on the clock than those guys. I think. I mean, especially Steve Smith talking about retiring, but yeah, it's sort of towards the end of that era. I guess no one plays in a quad series, in a quad test series, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I also don't really remember the last time Australia going to New Zealand. I think about Michael Clark going home to break up with his fiancée. I think about Josh Hazelwood saying, "Who the fuck's the third umpire?" I think about sweaters. I think about Mark Waugh taking a really good catch at mid wicket. I think about Nathan Astle. I think about Craig McMillan.
Yeah. I think about 1993 in New Zealand wearing like white helmets at home and the coverage being very sparse and hearing, through like a, like a tomato tin and string that Shane Warne was doing stuff and not being able to see it, having to call up like a 0055 number on your landline to find out the scores, that's what I think about.
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a bit of talk recently in New Zealand about the drop off from the bowlers, particularly in terms of their bowling averages in this test cycle, this World Test Championship cycle, compared to the last one, where obviously they won the fucker. Then I suppose obviously Trent Boult doesn't play Test cricket anymore. Colin de Grandhomme the same. Tim Southey's a captain. It's just it's all part of the conversation of where cricket's going and stuff. But in the meantime, you're still right. I mean, they're still punching and they're still playing. So they've still got some great players, and that's been carried on. It seems with Darryl Mitchell, whose start to Test career has been absolutely incredible, averaging 59 after 17 Tests. It's fucking amazing numbers. He's scored hundreds home and away now as well. And then obviously they've done this without Kyle Jamieson, who hasn't played the last few series. Neil Wagner still going around at 37. Tim Southey's obviously got a great Test record. They're doing it with Bracewell as their spinner. Yeah.
No Bolt as well.
Yeah, no Bolt, exactly. So I don't know. I think they're still good, but yeah, I don't know when Australia go there. I don't think there's any plans for it in the short term, unless it's a 37 game white ball series. Speaking of white ball cricket, should we talk about the WPL? At the moment, most teams have played 4 games, and then Delhi and RCB have played 5 games. The big news, though, top of the storyline here is that RCB have not won a single game. They are 0 from 5. But the top 3 run scorers, Lopez, in the WPL, Meg Lanning, Elise Perry, Elisa Healy. Doesn't that make you feel unbelievably safe to see that Australians doing it overseas, especially in India? In the wickets column, though, probably somewhat more important. No Australians anywhere near the leading wickets. But the leading wicket taker is, I think it's Saika Ishak. Definitely said that wrong. Who's a left arm orthodox spinner. Interestingly, Sophie Eccleston is second. Obviously, the England left arm finger spinner. I'm not sure if there's any correlation with that, but just interesting that 2 leading wicket takers are left arm finger spinners. Anyway, so Saika is she's from South Calcutta. She's played 19s and 23s for Bengal. She's never played for India. She had a shoulder injury in 2018. She's playing for Mumbai and obviously dominating the tournament. I think she's got 14 wickets, and the next is like 8. And in the match against Delhi, she picked up Lanning and Shefali Verma, I think, in the same over, and then picked up Jemima Rodriguez as well. She got a wicket in each over against Gujarat. So she's picking up big scalps. I think she picked up Sophie Devine in that game as well. And I feel like you often get these kind of stories in T20 leagues, but maybe not necessarily specifically the IPL. Though you think you do get them in domestic T20 leagues. You get these stories of players, both men and women, who aren't really anywhere near the international setup per se, but they either have like a great run of form, or they have a terrific season. I remember, for instance, just to compare it to Australia in the Big Bash, I remember like Craig Simmons hit 300s in a BBL series, and he did play Shield cricket for Western Australia, and also Gordon first grade. That's more important, and he's a nice guy. But
how do you know?
Oh, because we're club mates. Therefore, I scored 300s in the Big Bash.
And he's a nice guy. Somebody ask me how I know that, please.
I'd say he's good on the beers. Oh, you want to have a beer with Big Shipper? Oh, you want to have a beer with a ship? Anyway, yeah, just it's interesting. You get these stories, don't you, from time to time about domestic players who, as I say, aren't particularly close to the international setup, but just have a great run of form. And maybe we're getting a similar thing here with this story. But given the stars that are turned out for the WPL, it's nice to see a domestic player like that who's had an injury and just playing. For Bengal, for instance, and nowhere near the setup, is doing so well so far. But so Mumbai are top of the table. 8 points there, equal with Delhi, who have played one more game, and then UP Warriors women. I don't like how they spell Warriors.
Thank you. That's what I've brought to this.
Yeah, I mean that's Elisa Healy's side. That's the side she's captain of. Then Gujarat a second. They've got 2 points. They're second last, and then RCB. That is Elise Perry's side. If you're just playing from the Australian perspective, Megan Schutt is also there. They have not won a game, 0 from 5. So that's where we're at with the WPL. It's often hard to talk about, leagues when you're just doing it week to week, as we find with the Big Bash per se. But that is my update of the WPL. Have you caught highlights? Are you catching glimpses? Have you seen some stuff? You like colours? Like something on the screens?
Do I like colours? Yeah. Those which I can see. No, that was a really thorough update, mate. I could just imagine people like walking, getting their avocados at the supermarkets and or wherever else they're going, like sort of pushing their earphones into their ears, just desperate for that. Like, okay, where's Mumbai on the table? You know what I mean?
And Warriors.
Yeah, that's right. And what are some of the peripheral stories of players not close to the international scene and how they're going? No, that was a really good update. I only brought 3 things. The first one, Healy made 96 not at one point, so she's got the highest score of the tournament, so that's safety. Yep. The UP Warriors. So UP is reference to the state Uttar Pradesh, and Warriors is not spelt the way you conventionally spell Warriors. Instead of an S at the end, it's a Z. UP Warriors. But as you look at it on screen, it looks like it's someone in capitals saying up and then Warriors with a Z, which is up Warriors. I don't know if the marketers kind of considered that might be confusing with a 13-year-old on a message board who supports Auckland, the Auckland Warriors in 1995 when they came into the comp. Up the Warriors, you know what I mean? Yeah. But that's a clinic of a joke there. But and then finally, there's still ways to go for the WPL. I would like it to have been called the WIPL, to be honest. But maybe there was legal issues with that because different franchises are involved than with the IPL, and trademark issues. People get confused for different grounds that we're particularly aware of. But like when I type in WPL, he goes like, I type in WPL news, I get Woodside Petroleum ASX share price news.
And how's that going? They up?
Woodside's going to be fine for a while. There's still enough players involved, I think, to keep them ticking along.
It's a big squad. It's a big squad.
They're ticking over okay, Woodside, for now. But, just if any of the WPL marketers just want a little bit of feedback on the old SEO there. When I type in WPL news, I get Woodside Petroleum Limited, ASX share price news.
I had a very similar thought, mate, that it scares me a little bit in terms of just owning of the game, because I like the IPL it still gives it enough distance for me because it's the Indian Premier League, it's the Indian Premier League. It's the Premier League that lives in India. The Women's Premier League, it's like, okay, this is the Premier League for women.
Well, it is.
We have the Women's Big Bash League. So, I'm not, and the Women's Super Smash, if that's a thing in New Zealand. So
if anything, it will go the other way, won't it? It will just be the Men's Premier League.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
there's nothing that gets comments out there like, those who for a while suggested the AFL should be called the AFLM. Just chucking the M on the end there. That brings out a few blokes from behind the trees on the old comment section. that's always a good one for a comment.
Come out the cave, and I'm doing just fine. Right.
Get the old digits out there with the Doritos on your belly.
Right, someone said something on the internet that I don't like, but I lick the old fingers here and get the old type on the old typewriter.
I go for the Swans in the AFLM.
Okay, let's talk about South Africa and West Indies.
Okay.
The two top line points here is that Maharaj ruptured his Achilles celebrating a wicket in the second innings. That was painful to watch as someone who has ruptured his Achilles, and it's extremely painful. And the main point is Temba Bavuma, the captain now of South Africa, has broken his 7-year drought, and he scored his second Test match 100. Let me tell you what happened in the game, Pez. South Africa batted first and scored 320. Aiden Markram again at the top, hit 96, almost went back-to-back. Tony DeZorzi hit 85. And then the West Indies hit 251 in reply. And then in the third innings of the game, South Africa hit 321, but with Bavuma's 172. The next highest score was Van Mulder, who hit 42. So it was a one-man show there from Bavuma. Incredible innings. He was eventually out by Holder. And so West Indies needed 391 to win, which they were bowled out for 106. And it was when Maharaj... Was it Maharaj? Yeah, when Maharaj picked up... I think it was Jermaine Blackwood. It made it 5 for 26. Then that was 6 for 34. Actually, it might have been the 6. It might have been Kyle Myers. So they went for an LBW review. It was given out on the field, and so they're all standing around the huddle. And then the ball crashes into the front dog, and Kyle Myers is out, making it 6 for 34. Maharaj goes to set off away from the huddled group. At which point his planted leg then explodes onto the field. And he ruptures his Achilles. So pretty grim scenes all round. But that means that South Africa win that series 2-0. They end up winning the game by 284 runs. So pretty comprehensive stuff. And yeah, last week I said that the West Indies hadn't won a Test series for 20 years away from home. That was wrong and dumb, because it's nearly 30 years since they've won an away Test series. So that's pretty grim all around. But for South Africa, good times. Apart from Maharaj, who's ruptured his Achilles, but Temba Bavuma hitting 172. It's 2 Test hundreds now. First one in 7 years. I've just got his stats here. What is the average in Test cricket? He averages 35 in Test cricket. He's got 20 50s. 20 50s. Unbelievable. To still average 35 and 200s. So, maybe a new dawn for South Africa. I like Bavuma. I think he leads the side well. He's obviously thrown to the deep end. I still think about that time when Quinton de Kock left the side in the UAE T20 World Cup, and there was the whole taking the knee situation, and he was thrown to the deep, and he was captain the side. He had to speak about that. He strikes me as a good person and a good leader, and if he's scoring runs, maybe he's a better player captaining. I don't know. Maybe not. One of those two things. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, a new dawn for South Africa. When do they play their next Test? How many are they playing in the next 5 years?
Well, I saw a friend of the show.
Go on.
I saw a friend of the show, Ali Martin, tweet the other day, because South Africa released their contracted players list for red ball cricket, and Ali Martin said in this time that the contracted period is for, they play 4 Test matches. So pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy for them that they got a win in a song. Truly, that's a sad state of affairs, and that's before you even get to the West Indies. But these are all some of these things are all going to be things that we will miss into the future. As we're discussing whether the players can carve CA out of the pie in a private equity dispute and play T20 cricket accordingly, and all these memories of a flat one at Ahmedabad and South Africa playing the Windies will be things that we tell our children about. Come and sit on my lap, Johnny, and they'll be like, please don't do that, Dad, anymore. You've actually been required to do that by the authorities. Anyway, so yeah, it's.
And I'm not your dad.
Yeah, I'm happy for Bavuma there. It's really difficult to reflect on it with any kind of context or future. Four tests in a contracted period. That's just where it's all going. We're available for sponsorship for T20 series coming up as well. We'll be covering the shit out of that. Can't wait.
Let's talk quickly about the Sheffield Shield, Pez. The last round of fixtures starts today. In fact, Tasmania, Queensland, New South Wales and South Australia are all playing right now as we speak on Tuesday morning. But the big news, Western Australia are playing against Victoria. The big news, though, of the week is that Sean Marsh has retired from first-class cricket. He has played 22 years for Western Australia, 22 years of Shield cricket. He played 38 test matches. He is a guy who is just consistently and relentlessly in the leading run scorers for the Sheffield Shield. Basically, every year he's been in the competition. He obviously had a really long run into the test side. And, you know, there's probably criticisms about that and whatever. He was just one of those guys who perhaps never quite was able to make it, though he played 38 test matches. That's fucking heaps. He scored hundreds in the side as well. He did heaps of good shit, but probably no need to denigrate or criticise perhaps his test career or shortcomings there when the guy has just been one of Australia's greatest ever domestic players, 22 years of Shield cricket. And anyway, he's retiring now, so that's a big hole for Western Australia, who are just about at the moment winning fucking everything.
Yeah, and you could see it was really heartwarming, you know, to watch his retirement and the way he spoke about his career, and then the reaction from a lot of his teammates and those who he's obviously come into contact with, those he's played with and against. He's just a guy who's held in, you know, enormous regard. He strikes me. We've only done one or two things with him in the past, but he just seems to be universally respected. It's easy to speak really glowingly about people upon their retirement, but genuinely he seems to be really liked, along, you know, with his brother as well in cricket. And so he seems to take a lot of respect and a lot of friends away from the game as well. And I think a lot of that respect comes from people have genuine respect for him as a player. Like not just what he's achieved in domestic cricket, and 38 test caps, nothing to sneeze at as well, but just the actual ability of the bloke. Now, it probably the international record doesn't reflect, I think, what a lot of people in cricket saw as his world-class ability. Yep. And that's just that's just the way things work out in sports sometimes. But he really was world-class as a player. The fact that he's still going to be able to knock around in the BBL, I think, at 40 as a bat goes to show how talented he has been as a cricketer. So, and so to have that and to have the respect and love from all of his mates, I mean, you can't ask for much more, you know, to go all the way and to match it with, you know, 30 test tons and all that kind of thing. That's just that every single star needs to line up for that. But I think he can be very proud of his career, and he just seems like a really, really great bloke, you know, a guy who's lovely, but also probably knows his way around a circuit as well, or has in the past, you know. So I think he's done it all.
That's right. That's right. So he'll turn 40 in July. Just looking at his numbers here, six test hundreds. He averaged 34 in test cricket, 2,265 test runs. He scored 7 ODI hundreds. I had not clocked that. It scored 7 ODI hundreds. His average though in first class cricket is what's his average in first class cricket? It is 41. 41 in first class cricket with 32 hundreds. He played for Australia, Glamorgan. He played in the IPL for Kings 11 Punjab, Renegades, Perth Scorchers, and obviously Western Australia. Those were his teams. I mean, I agree with you. I think there's from like the age of 17 or 9, I think he scored his first 100 at 19 for Western Australia. I think ever since then it was like, oh, Australia's got a world class player here. And I think you're entirely right. Like when you watch it gel, fuck, it was good looking as well. But you know, sometimes it's one of these guys that's you know, see, like 30, averaging 34 in Test cricket is just not a disaster, you know. But it's a disaster in the sense of what I think people's aspirations and hopes for were. I think you nailed it. I'm just sort of just changing the words around a bit to suit my ear and make me feel good. Anyway. So he's retired, and the last game, as I said before, the last game of the Shield season starts today, and New South Wales have not won a game, so they'll be trying to avoid. They're trying to avoid having a winless season. They're playing against South Australia in Adelaide, I think it is at the moment, and they've actually dropped Curtis Patterson, who was the captain of the side. So it's all going pretty well for New South Wales in a really, really good and impressive season. I suppose as well we should say, I mentioned before, Pez, about Western Australia winning fucking everything. Obviously the Scorchies, the Perth Orange team did a really good thing, And the Western Australian side have just won the Marsh Cup. They fucking dominated South Australia in the final that was held at the Wacker as well. I like seeing cricket at the Wacker again, man. It's probably a little bit of nostalgia for me, but I just like seeing cricket played at the Wacker. And Inglis scored a imperious 170, I think it was. I think Bangkok got 96 as well. Right. And South Australia forgot how to catch. That was fairly critical. But then Ashton Agar took 5 for as well in the bowling innings. So the best team has most definitely won that competition. And you look at the names on the team sheet, it's like it's Ashton Turner, it's Ashton Agar, it's Stoinis, it's Inglis. Name other international players that I'm missing there. There's fucking heaps of them. It's actually a pretty decent international side, which I think I actually read someone saying that. Maybe one of the players saying that after the game, which makes you feel that must feel amazing to win something and being like, we'd actually be a decent international side. So the beers must have been absolutely flying around the Wacker sheds.
And I feel like the Wacker boys would know how to get a beer to fly around the sheds as well. No, it's great. Yeah. I like WA doing well in cricket. I don't know. There's a safety to it. I don't know if it's a New South Wales thing from being a kid. They always had a good side too. Just they're big. You're across the Nullarbor there. Hue of the Light stuff, muscles, Cam Green. Everyone's big and oppositional to other states. It's fine by me. I wonder. I mean, Josh Inglis is flying at the moment. I mean, there's a couple of keepers flying. Like Jimmy Pearson is as well. I've said it a few times, but Josh Inglis, he I think there's a question about whether he, in the way England does it, like he can exist as a bat in his own right. He 130 here in the final. He's over in India now with the ODI side. I'm sure he's just a reserve keeper. I mean, Alex Carey's very firmly set in that ODI side, but can he play as a stick too? I mean, England don't have a problem with those things, and they're the best white ball side in the world as well. I'm just keeping an eye on that because he's Josh Inglis's time is now. He's a gun. I think he's good. He's good for international cricket, as in he's ready.
Here's something for you, Pez. I'm dropping Dave Warner from the Ashes lineup. Stay with me here. Now we saw what Travis Head did in India. I think he answered a few questions about his ability to play spin with a very impressive 49 in the fourth innings in indoor. Then obviously scored 90 here on a flat one, but still. Just the way he went about it was very aggressive. It reminded me of a younger Dave Warner. Dave Warner sort of changed into a little bit more of a circumspect player. Maybe circumspect or cautious is too strong a term. Travis Head to open the batting, get someone like Inglis, to sort of match the Bazball style of cricket which we've seen. I don't know. I'm just saying. I think one of the maybe Andrew McDonald said we have not thought in any way about Travis Head opening the batting. Then next Test match he opens the batting. I just wonder if they've just sort of unlocked something there because obviously Travis Head has opened the batting in ODI cricket very successfully for Australia in recent times. If they've unlocked something and there's a new way to try and match England in that respect, or I'm not even sure if Australia will try and do that. But yeah, I like where you're going with it. Just get guys who are scoring bulk runs, they score them quickly. To put a bit of pressure back on England's bowlers. All I'm saying is the next series is more important.
Yeah, I just think Australia's got some change coming up with the bat. They've got 3 or 4 guys in there who are going to retire in the next year or two, and I don't think Josh Inglis should be forgotten on account of the fact that he wears the gloves. Even if it's just in white ball cricket for now, but he seems to be absolutely smoking them. He's leading that WA side from a run perspective, I think, across the formats if you sort of take it as a collective. So anyway, I rate it.
I'm just looking at Western Australia's team. They had Philippe, Josh Inglis, Cameron Bancroft, Mitchell Marsh, Stoinis, Ashton Turner, Aaron Hardy, Ashton Agar, Jason Beresdorff, Matthew Kelly, and Andrew Tye. So there's actually a huge number of capped internationals in red and white ball cricket. Yeah, it's Australia too. It fucking makes me feel good. I also like the yellow. I like the yellow and the black. And indeed Kodak Black. Okay, should we get into hashtag AskTGC, Pez, to wrap up this here show?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Anon wrote in, boys, please keep anonymous. I write to you with a tale of an eventful Saturday that dates back to the summer of 2020. Due to the coronavirus outbreak, my girlfriend and I had been forced to cancel our travel plans, which meant we had to move from London back to my parents' house in Gloucestershire countryside. While this was less than ideal, one of the main upsides was that I had started netting at our local village club with some old friends. For the sake of anonymity, let's call them Roger Fairbody and the Snake. Okay? Roger Fairbody and the Snake, all right? Anon is having a net with Roger Fairbody and the Snake. Yeah, yeah. I think I saw them play an acoustic set once. I hadn't played much cricket while living in London, mainly last man stands games, LMS games, and the odd Saturday game, so I was enjoying the regular net sessions. We had sure our net sessions were not on the same day as the club's training, so we could sink 4 to 6 beers each, smoke joints openly, and blast music from the portable speaker. Hearing Biggie Smalls declare, "I love it when you call me Big Papa," after blasting Fairbody back to the bowler's end of the net was a Wednesday night worth living. After a few weeks of net sessions, Fairbody, being a local celebrity in the village, spoke to the second team captain of the club and managed to get us all into the team for the upcoming Saturday. Glorious, we thought. Just what we've been working towards. Game day finally arrived and we're playing away, about a 45-minute drive to the opposition ground. Fairbody is driving with the snake, and I was excited, and I as the excited passengers. I'm sat in the back of Fairbody's company car, along with an assortment of discarded beer cans, coffee cups, sweet wrappers, damp-smelling clothing, a 7-iron, and a duvet. What a maverick, I thought. About halfway into the journey, Fairbody's paw reaches back between the seats, clutching some unwrapped foil. "Weed brownie?" he asks. As much as I had enjoyed this batch of homemade weed brownies, I decided to pass ahead of the match, as did the snake. Fairbody gobbles one down and we arrive at the ground 20 minutes later. The ground is a typical English village ground, tiny boundaries with sheep and other livestock on the other side of meagre fences and a small wooden pavilion in the corner. The skipper loses the toss and we're bowling first. Fairbody has the new ball. After a good start, the batsman chips the last ball the first over at a catchable height back past Fairbody. He moves in slow motion to try and catch it after the ball is already a few metres past him. "What the fuck happened there, mate? Why didn't you catch it?" I ask him after the over. "I can't see shit. That weed brownie just kicked in," Fairbody replies. This was a good indication of how the day would pan out. The opposition ended up scoring just over 300 from 50 overs. The run chase didn't get off to a great start and we lose a few early wickets, which brings myself and Fairbody to the crease. Our partnership surpasses 50 runs, at which point I middle a cover drive and call Fairbody through for a single. The fielder swoops in and fires it to the keeper. "Sorry, mate," I say to Fairbody as we pass each other mid-single, and he is easily run out. He looks at me and shakes his head, then trudges off. I felt awful. Anyway, I just miss out on a ton, 76, and we end up all out for around 200 and easily lose the game. The beauty of this being second team wheelie bin village cricket is that nobody gives a fuck about the result, and after enjoying a few beers with the opposition, we head back to the local pub in our home village to carry on the evening. Several pints later, the local pub closes, so we head to the late night venue in the village, a dingy pub that is open until midnight. The pub is busy and there is a lively atmosphere. "My shout," I say to the boys as we enter, and I head to the bar to get the beers in. Whilst waiting patiently at the bar, I suddenly feel a big sausage finger in the corner of my mouth fishhooking me. I turn around to see Fairbody pissing himself laughing, at which point I start to notice an unmistakable tangy taste in my mouth. "Was that MDMA?" I ask Fairbody. He nods his head in confirmation. "Just a little bit of Mandy for you, mate," he says with an evil grin on his face. I didn't mind the occasional visit from the elusive mistress, but after 10 plus pints, I blacked out about 15 minutes later. The next thing I remember is staring at myself in the bathroom mirror. "Where the fuck am I think to myself. And then I recognise the bathroom and realise I am at the snake's house. Suddenly, I'm desperate for a shit. A delayed come-up shit due to the blackout period. I look around desperately, but there is no toilet in sight. This is coming whether I like it or not. So I pull my pants down and defecate straight into the bath. As I'm sat on the edge of the bathtub, trousers around my ankles, I remember the snake's toilet is in a separate room next to the bathroom. I clean myself up and try to use the shower to wash away the mess I've made. After a few minutes, I go to turn the shower off, but I've completely forgotten how I turned it on. For the life of me, I can't figure out how to turn this fucking shower off. My mind is blanked. I'm fucked both physically and mentally at this point. The bath is filling up more and more, and the realization that it will overflow and my shit will start spreading all over the bathroom floor hits me. In a state of panic, I decide to scoop the lumps of shit out of the bath and drop them into the toilet next door. My first attempt could have been more successful. I barge into a dark room, both my hands cupping a Cleveland steamer. "Hello," I hear a female voice say. "Fuck, I've barged into the snake's mum's room, cupping my own shit." Yes, that's right. Mama Snake had been in her pit the whole time I'd been shitting in her bath. I wonder if she noticed the next time she went for a relaxing candlelit bubble bath. I guess we will never know. I quickly retreat and drop the first load into the toilet across the hall. I repeat the process until all feces have been disposed of, at which point I finally figure out how to turn the shower off. The next morning, I tell Fairbody and the snake what has happened, much to their amusement. Surprisingly, they have little sympathy for the living nightmare I went through. The snake's mum then enters the room, looks at me and says, "You came into my room with such bravado last night." I don't think she realised I was carrying a handful of my own shit at the time. So here are my questions. No need to answer them if you don't want to. I just feel like I needed to share that story. Do you think Fairbody was justified in fish hooking me with MDMA because I ran him out earlier that day? Do you think all errors made on a cricket field should be avenged with harsh justice of it? Should I try and channel the bravado I was showing on that fateful evening next time I play an intense village second 11 game? Am I the only person who thinks it's fucked up to have a bathroom with a toilet in, without a toilet in it? Keep up the good work with the pod, boys. Cheers, Anon.
Fantastic.
What do you want to do with that?
I don't think there's much to do with it, but the nexus of drugs and cricket is an interesting one. You know, like when we played, marijuana was not something that really went with cricket. You know, like cricket was all about uppers. Cricket's pingers and coke, and yeah, that kind of. I mean, and even back then, like you're in your early 20s, so coke's not that accessible from a financial standpoint. So it was a real pingers game, to my memory back in the day. It was a game. It was a game of pingers.
$20.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. $20, $30, $20. That was good. I think my children are coming home, so I should stop talking about drugs. But maybe not. Yeah, I was always too paranoid to mix the two, even like drinking before games and stuff like that. No problem drinking and whatever else afterwards, but never did that. Like the only nexus I had was like I remember after a PG's game once, like under 21s. My mate, who's a musician and musical theatre performer, asked me for his birthday to audition with him for Grease, which he wanted to be in. For his birthday present, he wanted to watch me audition for Grease after a game of cricket, which was just incidental. So he came and picked me up. We lost that game. I had sunburn already. Really bad sunburn and something in my eye from the cricket. And then on the way up to, I was 20 at the time, maybe 19. No, it's 20. And on the way up to the performance space, which he said was just a community thing, we got high, which is bad. You know, it was bad. But there was a joint involved. And then I just got really paranoid. He loved it, but I had to. It turned out it was Sydney Youth Musical Theatre, and they all knew him, so he was fine. But I had to go and audition in front of 3 people sitting at a table, Australian Idol judge style, with like sticky tape on the floor and stuff. And I walked in, and there was someone on a piano, and they said, "What will you be performing today?" And I said, "I'll be performing You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You" by Dean Martin, which was not on the list of things. And there was a camera there, and the man on the piano said, "Would you like accompaniment?" I said, "No, a cappella." And I started clicking, "You're nobody," and I got a part, and my mate got that video and played it at my 21st as well, and he wanted to get stoned before every performance we did, but I couldn't do it because it just made me too paranoid to do. So I commend these guys for taking drugs and playing cricket. I think Fairbody is one of the great men. I think to run him out only for him to like fish hook you some MDMA later on shows what a wonderful person he is, and I think play on for everything that happened in that.
I think I really like the description of his car, where there's this mismatch, eclectic, like a 7i and a duvet, coffee cups, you know, like
sweets, wrapped, sweet wrappings on the floor.
Yeah, cutting a bit of garden hose, Gatorade bottles with holes in the sides of them, just that sort of eclectic mix of paraphernalia in someone's car is something very relatable diving into cricket. Anyway, thank you very much, Anon, for that story. Thank you very much for everyone listening in to tune to this show. We'll catch you guys on Patreon later on this week. And if you want to keep supporting TGC, or indeed support TGC in any way you choose, Patreon is the go for that. So thank you very much. We'll see you coats on the internet next time. Cheers.